You are coming with me, not in search of the birth of tragedy from the spirit of music, but instead an earlier German philosopher, whose writings are analysed or interpreted by the French philosopher Gilles Deleuze while he was teaching philosophy, quoted by innumerable others. Deleuze, like Theodor Adorno before him, was hopeless on the dance floor, but came to understand with the help of his friend Felix Guattari that as an aesthetic experience, music seems to have a much stronger, deterritorializing force, at once more intense and much more collective. Adorno refused to locate himself in a beat or the noise of pop. He theorized in favor of a fragile trend in modern composition, which prioritized abstraction and formal rules, in particular the serialism of Arnold Schoenberg, which operated against the performative autonomy of virtuoso individuals in favor of the rationalized conceptual composition. Adorno lost it when it came to jazz and had nothing to say about radical black classical composers. Thelonious Monk, Charlie Parker, Nina Simone, or Sun Ra, and was dead by the time Julius Eastman embodied furious negation and melancholic rage in post-minimalist work such as Gay Gorilla or Evil N/GGR. In short, Adorno maintained a certain position that was racial and sedentary, a reception of sound imagined as a radical anti-capitalist headgame. Alas, Deleuze, in opposition to pop, is trapped in that double negation and repetition with its faded refrain. We arrive here after the writings of Jacques Attali, who better understood the radical rupture between noise and composition. Composition in music, like philosophy itself, was systematized through technologies of recording. Ancient ledgers of cuneiform inscription instructed players, whom we must assume were typical humans and did not lack memory, but valued techniques of translation to turn musical concept into recorded culture. Ancient cultures are more diverse and distributed than was imagined at the time of the Enlightenment. Philosophy, which Heidegger encouraged us to imagine had a mistress in ratio, might also have had a chorus in stereo. Let us not forget that the technology of music does not stand still, nothing does. So perhaps we might ask, when is a singer not a philosopher? Or what is that? Unlike Plato or Aristotle, Somerset are audible pleasures. In Greek philosophy we can even hear. Sikalos is remembered in song. While you live, shine. Have no grief at all. Life exists only for a short while, and time demands his due. The tomb on which that song is etched also includes another inscription in ancient Greek. It roughly translates to, I am a tombstone, an image. Sikalos placed me here as a long-lasting sign of deathless remembrance. There are older fragments too at Delphi, which would have been hymns performed by the Guild of Dionysus, their rites following ways not rooted solely in Greece, coming from cultures and geographies that flow into the Mediterranean. The ways, paths, procession towards places of study and rituals. Tombs, for example, demand an oral and even secret wisdom. The dead accumulate speculative ideas mapped outside of philosophy. They arrive without permission on its periphery, and on that edge to disturb its borders and languages. The dead, their prayers, their stars, their gods, their sublime tombs and technologies of recording time. The time procession, the sunrise and sunset. Kant, in his early studies, followed Isaac Newton and a fascination with lunar orbits and their gravitational impact. What did they know of Thoth? Ancient sites, often hidden beneath earth and sand, beyond European borders, prehistoric peoples made objects of aesthetic quality, things with utility beyond practical need, but also simultaneously scientific tools. Nietzsche understood Greek tragedy as profound, as a site of etymological archaeology, its unconscious roots, genealogy specific to Greece, but extending beyond the limits of its language into Egyptian and Persian mythology. Our classical roots are deeper than philosophy imagined. Philosophy, in the mouth of Heidegger, dances with the shadow it forgets. He should not be allowed to forget that in the ruins of Alexandria, Greeks like Aristotle came to plunder and copy. The 18th century is an epoch of late modernity and evolved colonialism. Although reading was accessible on the streets, this did not immediately create a spontaneous desire for liberty across the globe. In cities like Paris, Madrid, Amsterdam and London, knowledge was hierarchically distributed, and great debates on God, reason, anthropology and race conducted slowly through public correspondences, servants and slaves differently entitled to reading and writing. European sovereigns sought to maintain their crowns through leading and contesting control of international investments and systems of distribution, economies of circulation, including slavery. This prejudiced the social and ethical speculations of that era. In Kant's philosophy, when he mentions slavery, it is mostly with reference to ancient history and Roman and Greek society. He is known to have read about the colonial abuses of slavery in the Sugar Islands, but is unconcerned for their freedom of imagination. His concern is that all humans are human and there is only one species. Others, like David Hume, had argued there were multiple species, rather than differences of culture and geography. Kant appears to assume his readers are not slaves, and therefore shall not judge his theories or racism from that perspective, but indeed perhaps consider that he showed good taste. The problem with good taste, like ethics, is it can lead to a sour impression of prejudice. This sensibility is not unique, and indeed artists and musicians of the period in England are known to have invested in the slave trade. In 1720, whilst living in London, George Frederick Handel, for example, had various bank accounts whose records survive, one with the Bank of England, and another for his wages from the Crown, which were investments in the Royal African Company, whose business was in slavery, the transatlantic slave trade. The royal connection reminds us that Zadok the priest composed for the coronation of George II in 1727 continues to be played at every coronation in Britain. The logo of that company was the elephant and castle, and was indeed stamped on the sovereign, preeminent coin of the period. At Handel's house, which is now a museum, he shares with James Marshall Hendrick. Staff were candid about the forensic accountancy which had been undertaken more recently. They noted not only had he sold out of the South Sea bubble in 1719, but almost gone bankrupt before the Messiah turned his fortune around, the Bank of England keeping a special window open for late-night deposits from his new English opera. Handel is not remembered for his bonds, but is well known for his bequests to his servants and to the Foundling Hospital. There has been a general propensity to ignore slavery as industrial genocide. In part this is because it was marginalised in philosophical and economic theory, not least those of Karl Marx, who, like Kant, circumnavigated the slave trade throughout his writing. Black ascetics, as explored at the International Curators Forum Symposium at the Venice Biennial in 2007, remains a question, not of apartheid, but is instead one of political liberation, in asking, is there a black ascetic? The symposium acknowledged the pavilions of the Giardini in Venice are haunted by colonial histories and ascetics. Black ascetics predate this merely European mirage. However, even esteemed philosophers such as our guest Jacques Rancière, who understands how racism is propagated by leftist horticulturalists, enjoyed the champagne and canapes, which fooled everyone into thinking they were at the right place to see the end of apartheid. Segregation and prejudice survived that party, and in 2024, the curator Adriano Pedrosa announced, "I am honored and humbled by this prestigious appointment, especially as the first Latin American to curate the International Art Exhibition, and in fact the first one based in the Southern Hemisphere." Art exhibitions have become points of convergence for discourses of political protest, the art world being characterized by an excess of assets and a deficit of ethics. Artists and curators move in its economy carefully. Pavilions in Israel and Russia will reflect the current confluences of ascetic warfare. Artists cannot be trusted to escape the violence of their state.